alaikum and welcome to Ideations Tech. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about the Django REST framework and how we set up a project and then get started with our very first API, developing our very first API. Without further delay, let's get started. First, we will install Django and the Django REST framework. So if you have already Python installed, pip3 install. On Windows, it's just going to be pip3 install Django. Great, my requirements are already satisfied. Then pip3 install Django REST framework. So this is the Django REST framework, meaning what we'll be using for actually creating REST APIs. So pip3 install Django REST framework. And yes, my requirements are already satisfied. Now that we've gotten that done, what we can do is create a project. The project folder is simply for your settings and your server file, so development and production server, and then the settings, so how your project will be laid out. Let's go ahead and create a Django project. We're going to say Django admin start project, and we're going to keep our project's name inventory underscore project. Don't forget to put a dot to avoid subfolders from being created. So we want our project to be under our inventory folder, which we already have. We don't want a folder within a folder, something like that. Hit enter. Great. As you can see, our project folder has been created along with its files inside. And Django is batteries included, meaning whatever you need project related, it has the files already there for you. All you have to do is start writing code, meaning you need to start planning out and coding your language. You need to start, sorry, not language, I mean, you need to start coding your logic on what your API should do. So our project folder is created. Now let's create an app folder. So the app folder is where things like your models, your views, your app URLs, things like that will be there. So that's where the app action is happening, and the project folder or the project side is managing that app, meaning it has it registered, and we're going to register it right now also. So Django admin start app, and we're going to call our app API. All right, so if I run this, there we go. So we have our app created in our project folder. So ignore the ASGI and WSGI files. We're going to be focusing on the base URLs, this urls.py, and settings. So in the settings.py file, we have, I'm going to go over the important things. So usually there are comments here to guide you on what some of the variables mean, but we're going to start off with debug. So be sure to set this to false if you're deploying or running in production. Otherwise, all your errors are going to be exposed. So be sure to set this to false if you're in production. Now the allowed hosts, this is to, who you want to allow, like which network do you, or domain do you want to be allowed on, like which host can serve this application, like when you run on a production or development server. So we're just going to say star for all, since this is a tutorial, we can just say star, that allow all. The installed apps, inside of this, we're going to include REST framework, what we just installed. So REST framework. This is so that we can utilize REST framework. We can use the many things it has to offer in helping us build our REST API. And we need to also register our app name. So that's API. Remember, the project needs to know, so our settings, our Django project settings have API registered, meaning we are now clear to work with our app. And we can communicate with our app. It's connected, it's linked in a way. Middleware, this is all security related. The root URL config, well, that's just urls.py inside of your project folder. And then we have templates. Templates are for your HTML templates, but we're not doing that here. Databases, this is where you can define your database configuration. So if you're using PostgreSQL, MySQL, or something like Microsoft SQL, you'll define the engine name, username, password, and port, things like that. You'll define them in here. But we'll be using SQLite 3 by default. Auth password validators, these are also a security related setting. So auth password validators, these are your password validators. Language code and time zone, well, that's just your personal settings. And then static URL, that's where your HTML, CSS, and well, not HTML, sorry, but CSS, JS, and image files are. But we're not working with that because this is a REST API. So the backend, not front end. So this is your settings.py. Now we can move on to the app folder where we'll be working the most. Now we have the admin file. The admin file will store, I'll be showing how the admin works, but as of now, the admin works like this. So whatever models we make, like whatever data we are taking in, for example, we're taking in the price, the product, and the quantity. So that data can show up in the Django admin. Now Django provides you with an admin panel for managing users and also data flowing on your API or app. So that's useful. We're going to be using this. Apps.py, this is just your app config. So an identification that, hey, yeah, my app name is API. Models, this is one of the most important files you have. This is where your models will be defined. Your data models, so our data models, as you'll see later on, our data models will be regarding inventory. So what's in an inventory? The price, the quantity, the name, and how many are in stock, things like that. These fields will become columns in our database. So our data models, once again, when I get to them, then I'll explain them in full detail. But as of now, this file handles all data related things. So our models, our table and our fields, which we want in a database, migrated. Next is views.py. So views, this is where everything will be coming together. The models, the serialization, everything will be coming here to make up the API view. Now the API view is where the action is happening, where JSON is being returned and requests are being made. This is where everything is happening. All right, so now that you know how a Django project is set up, specifically for developing a REST API, now we can go ahead and start with our models. So we're going to start by creating a class. So we're going to say class, and I'm going to name this inventory. Okay. Now I will inherit from models.model. Model is already imported here, so I'm inheriting from model, which will give me access to the many fields which are available. So let's start with our first field. We're going to say the name, or you know what, let's just say title. Title equals models dot char field. So a char field, yes, it's your character field. And we're going to set a max length argument of, we're going to say only 50 characters max are allowed in this field. Next, we have, we can say the price. So price equals models dot, and we'll keep this an integer field just like that. And if you want, you can set a default if you want. You can set this to 0. So what should be the default amount? We can set it to 0. Next, we can talk about the description. So description will be the item info. So models dot, this is going to be a text field. So a text field is bigger than a char field. And we can define a max length of 500 characters. The final thing we can say is it in stock. So in stock, it's a yes or a no. So it'll be a Boolean field. Models dot Boolean field. And as you can see, there are many fields you have access to. So max, oh, sorry, this doesn't have max length, but if you want, you can have a default value set. So we can set the default value to true. That yes, an item is in stock. Once it's added, yeah, of course. Okay, our models are ready. So what this is, how this will go down is that inventory, this class name will become a table name in our database. And these fields will become the fields or the columns within this table. Great. So now let's go ahead and make migrations. So Python 3 manage.py make migrations. Your manage.py file handles everything from my database migrations to running the server. So important file, do not change it. It's used to control your Django application. So Python 3 manage.py make migrations, and then just type in your app name. So our app name is API. Let's make the migrations on this. Great. It's created our migration. So now once it gives you this all clear message, so this means, yeah, everything went successfully. The model inventory has been created. Now we can migrate our migration. We can officially push it. So we can say Python 3 manage.py migrate. As you can see, it wrote a lot of tables, and most of them in regards to our admin panel. So some of them are related, like user, alter user, username, user group, all that. That's all going to be in the admin panel. Let's go ahead and run our server. So we can say Python 3 manage.py run server. And this is what I mean by controlling our Django app. Great, it's running on the server. Everything seems to be fine since we encountered no error. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 0.0.0 colon 8000. Great. Our install worked successfully, meaning our Django project was set up accurately and is ready to we're ready to continue. Now we're going to head on over to admin. So /admin, and this comes from your base urls.py file. So here's our admin URL. Okay, so for creating an admin, you need to create a super user, and that's also done using the manage.py file. So we can say Python 3 manage.py create super user, and create super users all together. So here you're gonna go ahead and create a username. So we can say admin, an email address. We can just say user@example.com, just like that for this tutorial. Just using a demo email, just an example email. A password, so I'm just going to set a small password. Great, yeah, I kept it small. Well, you know, this is a tutorial, so I don't need to be too secure right now. But when you're setting passwords for your personal apps or whatever you're working on, seriously, be sure to keep a strong password. Great, super user created successfully. Now we can run the server again. Reload, great. So let's type in the credentials. So admin, I kept my username and password. Look at that. We are now inside of our admin panel. Isn't this exciting? We have the users. So from here we can create users, set their privileges, but we don't see the models. We don't see the model we created for inventory. Well, that's because we haven't added it in our admin file. So let's go ahead and register our admin, let's go and register the model with our admin. So how we will do this is we need to import the models. We need to import the models file. So from dot, meaning from the current directory that the admin file is in, from dot import models. And now we're just going to simply say admin.site.register, and we're going to pass in models.inventory. So we are accessing the class from our models module. Okay, now that that's set, and you can see our app is reloading constantly itself. Yep, that's going to happen. If we go back and I reload, look at that. Inventory is there. Now, yeah, it's saying inventories. Well, you can change the name by going back to your models and making a meta class. So this is kind of like the properties of your model. So class meta, and we can set verbose name plural to, let's just say, inventory data. Let's just say that. If I go back here, you can see it's changed now. Inventory data is now, so inventories is now inventory data. We can go ahead and click this. Okay, so let's create an item. So let's add a title. Let's call this chips, and we can set the price to 1, or you know what, 2. A bag of yummy chips. Great. And is it in stock? Yes or no? Of course it's in stock. There we go. Now you're seeing inventory object. That's return. We don't want that. We want to be more descriptive. We want to be more communicative. How can we change this? Well, all we have to do is go back to our models, and we need to set a string representation. So we're going to use a dunder method, def underscore underscore str double underscore self, and then we're going to say return self dot title. So we want a string representation of the name, the title returned. And if I go back, if I refresh, you can see now the title comes up in the table. There we go. Now it's represented as a string rather than the object title. So this is our admin. This is how we set up our models. Well, you'll set up your models however you want to, but this is how we set up the models for our inventory API. And this is how we link them up to the admin. So we have this all defined. Now let's go ahead and create a file named serializers.py. The serializers, oh, sorry. The serializers are going to be for serialization and deserialization. So getting things from the database into JSON and then taking things in JSON and pushing them to the database for their individual fields. So we can go to the API folder and say serializers.py, and I'd recommend that you keep the file name serializers.py. We're going to make some imports. So 2 imports only from REST framework, import serializers. So we'll be using the serializers module from the REST framework package. And then we're also going to import our models. So from .import models. And we are going to be keeping our serializers based off of our models. How that's going to be is like this. So we can, just like how we created our models via a class, we have to create a serializers class. So we're going to say class inventory serializer. Let's call it that. And now I'm going to inherit from serializers.model serializer. So the model serializer, yes, we're going to be using our models, so these model fields, for our serializer. Go ahead, and now we're going to create a meta class. So class meta, and remember this is for properties, and we're going to set the model attribute equal to models.inventory. So we're telling Django that, hey Django, I want whatever models I created, I want them to be for my serializers. So my serializers should be based off of my models, which is exact. So linked up. And the fields, instead of one by one, going and writing them, we can just say in quotations underscore underscore all. So we want all the fields included in our JSON and whatever inputs we provide. Great, that's done. Now, here's what we can do. Before I get into the serialization part, what we can do is we can go to the views and let's create a very simple API view. So we're going to first run an import. You can go ahead and remove render. So from REST framework, import API view. Oh, sorry. From REST framework.views, import API view. Yes. So the API view is the very simple view. It's like just a regular view for an incoming request and then sending back the appropriate response. So we'll be doing a GET request. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create a class, and let's say we want to display something in JSON. So we're going to say class test view, or say some view, and we're going to inherit from API view. So all of API views, functionalities, and things will be available to us. Now we're going to use the get method. We're going to say def get. So this is something that comes from API view. So we're going to be performing a get request. So self request, so the actual request, and we're also going to be saying format equals none. It's a default argument. Now inside of this, let's create something. So we can say, oh, and we also have to import one other thing from REST framework dot response import response. So we are importing the REST framework's response class, which will let us return a response to our user. So let's go ahead and return response, and we'll pass in a status code. And for status codes, you need to import another import. So we're going to say REST framework, from REST framework import status. This has basically the status code. So we're going to say first return the status code. So status dot HTTP. See, you have all these codes here. 200 OK, and we're going to return some data. So we can say something like I am, so some data. Great. Let's go ahead and run this. So yes, it's running. As you can see, it's reloaded, and we can just go ahead. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, I keep forgetting something. It's just that with Django, a lot of things are scattered, so it takes a while to, just make sure you're doing everything right. So we have to create a urls.py file. Now you can either create a urls.py file, or you can go ahead and just do it from this URLs. Well, we're going to go ahead and create our own separate urls.py. So urls.py, and you will copy the code from here because it's the same thing we want, and you're going to paste it here. So path, and we're also going to import views. So this is our URLs in our app. So from dot import views, we will be linking our view up. So the view, the logic is defined. Now it needs something to, get out with. The API needs to be accessible, the endpoint. So for that, we need to create the endpoint. We need to create the endpoint and connect it to a logic. In this case, our API view. So URLs, you can remove the admin, and we're going to say path. Now we can just set this as test. Great. And we're going to say views dot some view dot as view. So since it's a class-based view, we need to say that yes, we're telling this class-based view as a normal view. Great. We're all set. Our URL is hooked up to this view, and now we can interact with it. Let me go ahead and bring up the browser window. Great. Now I'm going to go and check out test. Oh, right. So with URLs, you also need to link. So we chose to go ahead and make an app. We chose to go ahead and make URLs for our app. Well, we need to link up the base URL, since it's like a gateway. The base URLs is where everything goes through from. So we can say path, and we can just leave this blank, or we can just call it API slash. And we'll also say include. Now we need to import include. Include will conjoin our two URLs. So we're going to say include API.url. So we're pointing towards our API, our app folder, and its URLs file. So API.urls. Great. All right, I promise I'm not missing anything now. All right. Now if we go ahead to test, oh, remember API, which is our base URL, and then test. HTTP status code must be an integer. Oh, right. So what we can do here is we can say, let's just make some data. We can say data equals sum, and then data. And we can also decide we can also pass in the status. So we can say status will be HTTP, oh, sorry, status dot HTTP 200 OK. And we're also going to put a comma, and then we're just going to pass in our data inside of this. Great, that works. If I run this now, oh, why is this becoming an error? One second. Oh, my apologies. I forgot to go ahead and not make that a string. Okay, now if we run this, okay, great. So apologies for the mix-up. This is the status code. So the request returned us a 200 HTTP status code, and we got our JSON. And the best part is that we have this browsable web interface for our REST API, which makes it easy for testing. So here is our JSON. It's all readied up, and everything is in place for us, and we got our dictionary, so some data, status 200, and it's being returned via response. So great, if you got this right, give yourself a pat on the back. Great job. And one thing you should keep in mind when you're working with developing Django REST APIs or any Django application, it's always best to, when you make a mistake, try to solve it on your own. Try to look back on your code and see where you got things wrong. Only then will you be more prepared to tackle bigger and badder errors, and you'll develop a mindset to then normalizing yourself with handling these errors. So always try as hard as you can to solve errors like what happened. Because with Django, yes, it's a bit of it's a maze. It's a framework, yet it's a maze, which file is connecting where. But in the end, with some good practice and some good error solving and problem solving skills, you'll be able to get it in no time. All right, so this was our basic API view. Now to wrap up this video, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to now create a generic view. So I'm going to say from REST framework import generics. This is what provides us with REST framework's ability to build like APIs quickly. This is the part. So generic views have CRUD functionality that they come with. So create, list, update, delete, that kind of thing. Let's go ahead and start utilizing our models, which we made right here, and our serializers. So we can say class, and let's call this inventory view. Our inventory view. And now we're going to inherit from generics dot, and look at all these views I'm getting. But we are after the list create API view. So you want to list data and you want to also create data. Now here comes the query set. The query set is talking about, okay, which model am I going to link up with? So we are linking with the inventory model. Query set equals models dot. So import your models and serializers from dot import models. And we're also going to say from dot import serializers. Great. So query set equals models dot inventory dot objects dot all. We're saying that, okay, we want all the inventory items, so the objects. That's our query set attribute defined. Now we're going to specify the serializer class. So serializer class will be equal to serializers dot inventory serializer. Great, we got that also. All right, so this is what we have so far. Let's see what it does. And yes, you need to change your urls.py file, which is in your app. So we can say items here. And we can also remove this name and set it to inventory view.asView. Great, our app is now reloaded and it's working. So let's go ahead and check it out. If I go here and let's call this items as we renamed it, look at that. If you got the same result, give yourself another pat on the back. You just created your very first REST API. And look, we have our JSON coming in. So this is the data we created from our admin panel. We have the ID, the title, the price, the description, and in stock. Great, we got it. And look at that, our serializer class, since we defined that, we are now allowed to post data. And since it's a list create view, meaning we can create, meaning we can post, we can make a post request, and we can make a get request. So list is for get, create is for posting. Let's go ahead and create some data. So let's say soda bottle, and the price will be 2, or you know what, let's do 1 cold bottle of soda. And it's in stock, sure. Look at that. Now our data has been saved to the database and the query set is returning it in JSON. So the serialization and deserialization process is already taken into account. It's already in effect. So this is our awesome REST API. And here you can see the allowed methods. So since it's a list create API view, you are only allowed to do get and post requests, as I said. So once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the amazing way you can create a quick REST API using the Django REST framework. Keep a lookout for more epic content coming over from Ideations Tech, and do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more epic content on Python related things, especially regarding the Django REST framework. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next video.